want to go any further, but that's an idea of what I would like.
Thank you. So, was there anyone else? So, this reminds us that the issue of policing, and when I say the issue, that's a little too soft. Police violence, police brutality, the relationship between the Detroit Police Department, which at the time was overwhelmingly white, its relationship is a brutal relationship, oppressive relationship to the black community, as you describe it, akin to an occupying army, occupying force. That was at the core of why the rebellion happened. So,
I don't know if this was mentioned before, but many of the Ku Klux Klan members who hid their faces behind sheets were members of the police department. During the daytime, and then at nighttime, they would go to their Klan meetings and discuss their hatred for people who didn't look and behave like them. I mean, there were a lot of Klan, and might still be. They used the police uniform and badge to basically fulfill their mission. And so I just want to make sure that that was mentioned. And I see now that my brother here wants the mic, so I'll give it to him.
Oh, this is great. I love to run my mouth. This is great. Listen, I just like to stick these other little points in for the younger people. So you got to remember, it's always been a sector of white people that was reactionary. It's always been a sector of white people that was decent. Always. Back in them segregationist days, it was white folks fighting against segregation. It was some white folks on the police department, probably not many, that they didn't like it. It was just like the movie Serpico. You know, he didn't like the crooked police, and he was white, and he could talk against his brothers and sisters. But I just like to bring that up because everything seems to be painted in such a broad brush for the past. Everybody was like this, everything was like that, and it ain't exactly true. It's just like it is now in the sense of human beings intermingling, you know what I mean? But anybody ought to know segregation would have never got done away with if it was just left up to us. You got to have allies. Got to have allies. And it's the same now. Now it's kind of hard for people to see now when you talk about Detroit like it was Mississippi, it's hard for people to see. But that's what it was like. That's what it was so segregated. I mean, the fire department was segregated. The police department was segregated. You know, all of us that work in the factory, you couldn't get into skilled trades worth a damn. You know what I mean? We called Detroit up south. I mean, Lansing was known to be the headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan. You know what I mean? And all that. So it was a horrible time. You know what I mean? But I'm saying if you was born into that, you was used to it. You thought it was normal. I mean, I know we're talking about policing, but I'm just saying, when Coleman Young them came in to deal with that stress unit, you would have had to see the stress unit. You might as well have been in Nazi Germany. That's why I still can't believe in America, it's hard for y'all to believe, some of the younger people, they had a Nazi headquarters on Michigan Avenue. They had right there in the window a miniature, what is it you put your food in? And stuff like that. A what? No, I'm talking about the microwave. You know, I'm old, you know. They had a microwave in the window saying this was for Jewish dwarfs. They had a gorilla in the window. You know, niggas go back to Africa. That was on Michigan. Avenue. People just don't realize what was going on. And see, the Vietnam War was going on at the time. I can go on and on, but the Vietnam War was going on, and you would have to see it. We had to register for the draft. You could be walking down the street, you're talking about the big four. They just pull up, you damn near instinctively went and got up against the wall. They could take your wallet out of your pocket, you better have your draft card. You know what I mean? Now when you talk about that, if you don't say Detroit, you think you're talking about apartheid South Africa. But that's what it was like. And I don't know how many times you're going to let us raise our hand on the mic, because every time you go back to the old days, we know that.
I think we're going to go back and forth between the old days and today's days. So that would depend on how many voices want to speak. Pastor wanted to add one thing.
I also wanted to point out that even after Coleman Young integrated the police department when he was mayor, we also have to talk about something called the Blue Code. And I just want to ask you young people, do any of you know what that means? Have you heard that before? What does it mean, the Blue Code? Amazing. You want to tell them what? Well, maybe not, but I'm glad that you know. When we say, as black people, even today, we have a fear, which we shouldn't have to have, of the image of a police officer. It really doesn't matter what his racial or ethnic makeup is, because of something called the Blue Code. I can't tell you how many times I've seen racist actions by police officers and other officers who look just like me, standing right there, witnessing it, not doing anything about it, because of what's called the Blue Code, which was a silent agreement among the officers. Kind of like you've heard, they say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You don't turn in or turn against your fellow officer. So this racism thing is really deep. How you can stand by and watch a racist act being committed. And I'm gonna say this, those of you who are in your various circles, when you hear something that's racist, do you always respond? Do somebody telling a joke and they mention the word nigger, or they mention something that is, not right, what do? Do you speak out against it and say, no, y'all shouldn't be talking like that? Or do you just be silent? We say silence is violence. But how often in our communities are we silent? That's the problem. That right there is the problem. Because even if you're not committing the act, if you know it's going on and you don't do anything about it, it's just like when you were kids on the playground and you saw your best friend being bullied and you didn't do anything or tell anybody because you don't want the bully to pick on you. You're scared. We can't afford to be scared. When you are behaving in a scared fashion in this United States of America, you are playing right into the hands of those that are oppressing us. Need to think about that.
So remember, we're trying to just remind ourselves and share with each other the previous session, moving on to today's conversation. Session 2 was about deindustrialization, right? About the transformation of the economy, Detroit's economy. Any recollections, thoughts from that session?
I'm telling you now, man, I'll keep my hand down, but I'm just saying, you know, I was in the session, I got to comment on them two things, that's what I got to say.
Well, I'm listening. It's open, I'm asking, I'm looking.
I'm gonna be kind of consistent in these comments because they permeate such a long period of time. You know, this is the home of the big three. One of the reasons we ain't got mass transit worth a damn, you know, because of them. You know, they demanded we didn't have it. But once again, I already mentioned how, you know, in their heyday of industrialization, especially after World War II, good God, can you imagine industrialization in the period of World War? You know, when I was a kid, that's where the concept came from, that if the economy got bad, just start a war. And, you know, everything would be all right because you burn up all these commodities and stuff. You know, that's where that concept came from. But once again, I just wanted to comment on the fact that it was, and I hate to just keep saying it, it was just so segregated. When they talk about, that's why you can't hardly touch nothing during that period without this race question coming up. And don't misunderstand me now. To me, it's not so much because of the individuals, because if we had a great system now, if everybody was walking with the lambs and the what have you, I mean, you know, you're going to have people that are no good. You're going to have people that are bad and what have you. So I'm just saying, during that time, the segregation was so bad that in the industries, the minorities had the worst jobs, but I worked in a foundry. We were getting burned up. People was dying right next to you. There was white people working right there with me. You know, it wasn't like, I told you I hate this broad brush thing. You know, that if it was dirty and down, it was all black. Yeah, no, we got the worst of it. That's no question. Your ability to rise above it was, I mean, that glass ceiling was way low. You know what I mean? Or way high. I put it like that, way high. You couldn't get it. But the exploitation of labor was just so great that you could see that here you making just enough money to get by, hoping you got some kind of retirement or something, and they just making millions and billions of dollars, and that has not changed. You know what I mean? That exploitation of labor within the capitalist system, to me, is the main enemy. You know what I mean? Where you got exploitation, you got to oppress people for that. You know what I mean? And if we could get rid of a system of exploitation, of exploiting people's labor, we could do away with a lot of this, unevenness on the planet. They told me they was, I know you said industrialization, but you know, at one point, the mothers in Haiti was making dirt cookies. They had found a dirt that the kids could eat. And they was making dirt cookies to send their kids, you know, for the day. Now, if you got a system where somebody eating dirt cookies and you got somebody else that's got $54 billion, that's just, it's just too uneven. It's too uneven. So, I know this was supposed to have been about industrialization, but I'm saying that industrialization going over into technology, now they're making more money than ever before, and what's the effect of it? Now somebody got $660 billion, and you got people that don't have water. You don't have water, and they know it's a health hazard. You know what I mean? When they put up the statistics for the poverty of children, you got this kind of poverty for children, and it's year after year. Like I say, this same stuff since I was a kid and my parents was a kid, and your parents. It's the same thing. They put the same stats out every year. We got to collect food for the kid. We got to collect clothes for the child. You know what I mean? Ain't nobody got health care. But I'm saying all that to say that industrial base that was laid, obviously the introduction of electronics and this new technology and artificial intelligence, they telling us now behind industrialization, artificial intelligence is going to have a robot that's going to take your job and might wind up killing you. What kind of nut is that? Who can believe that humans are going to stand back and let that happen? You know what I mean? But they got us in some kind of Star Trek world. They're telling us this is how it's going to be. And there's nothing you can do about it. We need organization. That's going to, in my mind, that's going to be our only hope. Obviously, you need some kind of theory and stuff like that, but I'm just saying, without an organization, we can forget dealing with these people. And my apologies, I didn't say that much about industrialization.
In the way you did, because you talk about technology, right? Technological change, and part of that section was automation. Automation was the technological change in manufacturing and production at that time. In that time, meaning 50 years ago, before that, and 50 years and since, leading to robots and so forth, artificial intelligence, things that are part of today's world, which gets us to where we're going momentarily, which is how we can use this understanding of the past 50 years to think about a vision, create an organization if we so choose for the next 50 years. Now, the beginning of what you said sparked the question that here, I'm going to ask Baxter to issue the question, and then if there is an immediate response answer to it, we'll have it. But Darian, you had your hand up? But then, if not, we're going to move to Darian, and then keep going. So please tell them your question.
He mentioned the big three. And this question is mostly to the younger people in the audience. He mentioned it in connection with why we never had a mass transit system in what used to be the 5th largest city in the country. Almost 2 million people in the city of Detroit. And not to mention, and somebody can maybe look this up, but in terms of square miles and area, maybe the largest city in the country. Getting from one side of the city to the other side of the city, territory. He mentioned the big three and how they had an influence on why this city did not get a mass transit system. And my question is to you, younger people in the audience, do you understand, do you know why that happened? Because you need to.
Question in charge. Stephen's going to answer, then we'll come in. Darian and back in.
So, okay, so I'm from the south side of Chicago, and the way our transit system is set up is way different from this one. It's very weird to me because I think the way it's set up is because jobs that tend to go to people who work downtown are usually either was at first in the city, but are now living in suburbs or suburban areas, as they say. So that's how it is in my city. But I feel as in Detroit, the priority wasn't to get workers to come from the suburbs to the city. It has always been an urban issue, an urban problem, and trying to figure out how workers in the city are going to get to the city, and that's just not happening. To me, most most of the people who work downtown barely even go downtown, or who have headquarters downtown. They barely go downtown. That's how I look at it. But in the city of Chicago, we have this huge, crazy bus system. It's either you're riding on the CTA or the Pace bus. And these systems, and also the train, these systems can get you legit anywhere in the city to downtown. And that's how it works for people who's trying to get to work to downtown. So
Now, you talking about the buses or you talking about the L?
I'm talking about the buses.
You talking about the L?
The L? No, I'm talking about the buses.
But talk about the L.
Talk about the L?
Because the L is your mass transit.
Yeah.
The fastest transit.
Yes.
All right?
So, because I don't live in the suburbs, I think the L reaches like, I think the L goes straight. I think the L goes straight to the airport. That's really crazy. I never really thought about that. Because I'm from the south side, so I'm usually taking the King Drive bus to downtown. Or when I'm at my grandma's house, she lives in Oak Forest, that's a suburb. I'm usually taking the Pace bus and then I'll get on the CTA, which will take me like 30 minutes to get downtown. But yeah, that's crazy.
The L is short for elevated, the elevated train, right? Mass transit in Chicago. So I think perhaps part of the point of the question was to recognize that the big three automakers, GM, Chrysler, and Ford, had the power to protect and project their interests. And that restricted the possibility of creating a mass transit, which would have been, many people would say now, to much great benefit to the citizens of the city and even the region, now and in the past for some time.
So what was that influence? What was their objective?
What was the auto company's objective? It was money. It was to maintain. Okay. Right, that thing to sell their product. Okay.
They need to know that because that's you all need to know that. You need to know that.
We are in the Motor City, and we are in this room where we have something of a traffic jam because there are many hands connected to people who want to speak. So you as a revelation, you say, oh, talking about this. Yes. Okay. He has been a report on this. You want to speak, right? So, I'm going to, okay, what's that? Is yours on this topic? On transportation? Okay, so thank you. So they're both yelling at me to make it plain, right? We're saying the auto companies wanted to be able to sell cars, mass transit would impede that.
We had a very good mass transit. It was the interurban. It went up to Pontiac, Rochester Hills from downtown Detroit. Streetcars, yes, they're still working in Mexico, I understand. Yeah. Standard Oil, General Motors, Standard Oil, and one of the tire companies, Goodrich or Goodyear, I can never, pardon? Firestone, okay. Those three companies, one auto company, an oil company, and a tire company, colluded together. Years later, they got a slap on the hands for that collusion and a very, very small fine. But they pulled the mass transit out of all of the major cities across the country, not just Detroit. So they did that and to put it back is expensive. But some of the cities have been starting to do that. But those three companies were the ones who did that and never got punished for it.
I think what they did, of course, was evil and bad, but their goal was profits. They wanted to sell more cars, and I think that's what their question was. Maybe it was just
Well, this woman's absolutely right, that Detroit in the 20s and 30s had a very dense public transportation rail system. But one of the things we should remember is that one thing we should remember is that the profitability of the auto industry, and particularly of Henry Ford, was to pay workers well enough to buy their own cars. And one of the things about the success of Ford Motor Company is that by the 40s and 50s, the people who rode rail to work at Highland Park or at River Rouge or the Jefferson plants and so forth were buying cars. And this set up a politics of cars being, preferred over public transportation. Once that happens, then the repair and replacement of public transportation is put aside, and in place, expansion of roads happens. Gratiot, Woodward, Grand River used to have trees down each side of them, and there were narrower roads, and they took the trees out and widened the roads so that the cars could drive on them. There used to be railroad. There was a railroad track down Oakland Boulevard, all the way from Highland Park to the River Rouge plant, that you could ride a rail. But as as cars replace the way of getting around, widening the streets and disinvesting in the tracks becomes the kind of politically and economically viable thing to do. And of course, the auto companies are all for this. But it wasn't like some great conspiracy initially. It was the success of the automobile industry in producing a workforce that could afford cars that opened up the city to cars in place of public transportation. Once the rails are taken out or not replaced, the skeleton that held the city together, that is, the infrastructural skeleton of tracks, went away. And when you don't have tracks, people who rode the rails to their destination. They got off and walked to their homes. And development went with the rails and not beyond the rails, because you couldn't get there without rail. Once you have a car, you don't need the rail. You can expand the suburbs and expand as far as you can reach. And so the whole thing is a dynamic that's capitalist for sure, and it's full of conspiracy, but it's also a dynamic that reflects the success of the auto industry in the Motor City. And it's a kind of irony of the thing.
Okay. What we also talked about during the second session on deindustrialization, I took some notes. So, we talked about a lot of black workers and communists in the city. The session ended up being very Marxist, which was funny. And it was great. We talked about Detroit Revolutionary Union Movement and League of Revolutionary Black Workers and the Stop Plant Closings Committee as well. And we also discussed the whole politic of the capitalist people who own factories exploiting black workers rising up and demanding more rights and justice in the workplace, and then technological advances that led to deindustrialization also led to these capitalists pulling out of the city and pulling out of the growing black population, and leaving them, unexploited by their capital, but also shit out of luck because they didn't have jobs anymore, and that's what the capitalists had power over them. Yeah. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. So you want to quickly add something to that?
I just have one rebuttal to the gentleman here, respectively speaking. Now, I know that some people don't believe in conspiracies. I don't care what you want to call it. But even after the auto industries knew and had started retooling and robotizing their auto plants, laying off people, there was, I don't know what you want to call it, but there was talk about putting a mass transit system in, and there was pushback on it. Now, I don't know what you want to call that, whether you want to call it conspiracy or not, but One thing that also occurred, and I can't say that it was totally after the rebellion and the response to Dr. King being killed in '68, where there was another large uprising all over the country. But many of the jobs, many of the companies, like Detroit Ball Bearing, they still kept the name, moved out of the city into the suburbs. So if you wanted to work at this company, you had to be able to get to the suburb. If you weren't among the fortunate people that was able to buy a car, as you put it, or lease a car, whatever, then you don't have a way to get out there. And so, in a way, it's preventing you from opportunities to provide for your family. And there was a lot of this that happened. I don't know if it was just Detroit or in other places throughout the country. But this is something that you need to understand and you need to realize is that you can't candy cover and coat racism. You can't do that. You can't explain it away. It's live, it's living, and it's up to you all, the younger people in this audience, to recognize it. Don't fall for the pretentious stuff that's out there to say, oh, that was back then. That doesn't exist anymore. It's still live and living and going on right now, and you can do something about it. But you can't do anything about it if you don't open your eyes and your ears up to the truth. Uncover the layers of lies. You have to do that. It's not going to be easy, but you can do it. You'll get to that last layer where the truth is. You'll get to it eventually if you want to.
We have many layers to what we're talking about. The gentleman with the El Rum poster has had his hand up. And I see a hand there.
I want to speak to a couple of things that have been going on in these symposiums. And for me, this is mostly for the young people, some food for thought. And I want you to think about I want you to think about the consequences of some of the things that are going on. I'm going to go back for a minute to what my uncle from down south told me when I was 9 years old. He could not read and write. I had to read his letters for him. But he told me this system cannot work unless people are working and able to buy things and provide for their families. What Henry Ford did when he created that assembly line is made America understand, getting back to what this gentleman said, made America understand the best way for capitalism to work is for the worker to be able to buy back his product. If you fast forward, as Detroit went forward, what you're going to find, because they have all of these things like white flight and all this other stuff, that's not the issue. Everybody's dodging the issue. They touch on it, but they dodge the issue. This man here used to be a chief steward where I used to work at. He had 1,500 people in the body shop under him that he represented. His counterpart in the body shop had approximately 1,500 people in the body shop that worked up under him. That was in 1971. Through the robotic and computer revolution, there are less than 500 people in the body shop now. Multiply that throughout the whole economy, throughout every section of the economy, and you see what's going on. These have dire consequences for you young people. You must organize and you must create an organization to deal with what's going on. They talk about mass transit and what the big three did. They've always had a plan. you're going to have to come up with a plan against what they're doing. That's always my message. And you've got to have an organization to do that. The reason why I brought this with me, this is a copy of the South End newspaper, the Wayne State newspaper, back in 1969, March of 1969. That's me on the end. The organization was LROM, which is part of the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. And it was a response to the racism. It was a response to the exploitation that was going on. And it was the best way we knew how at that time to carry out our generational responsibility. Because every generation has a responsibility to carry out something, because something is always going to be different. The point I'm trying to make about the organization, and this is what I'm really want to hammer on. Back then, you had several organizations in the city. For example, you had an organization called Unicom, United Community. If a person had a problem, there was somewhere to go for people to help you solve your problem. Right now, there's nowhere to go. They have created a corporate state in the country in which this city is part of, and where there's no organization where people are organized to deal with it. The reason why I brought this as an example, I'm not saying that you have to use all of our tactics, anything like that, but I brought this as an example. One of the articles in here talks about apartment 1970 being a death trap. But what we did, we pinpointed who the foreman in that department was. We pinpointed who the general foreman in that department was. We put them on the spot. So when we protested and when we did things, we had demonstrations, we had a face to look at. The corporation had to deal with that and had to deal with those people. Some of those people got fired, some of those people got moved. My point is, you're going to have to pinpoint some of this corporate, from the banking industry to the petroleum industry to the pharmaceutical. You're going to have to pick your spots, pick your fights. You're going to have to pinpoint these people, call them out, and you're going to have to create an organization to deal with these things. There really is no organization. That's your generational responsibility, in my opinion.
We have more challenges from here and there.
Break the microphone going away. Anyway, I know what y'all are talking about because I was born in 1964. When the riots happened, I was 3 years old when the riots went down. Old man, young buck here. So I'll tell you one thing about it. It woke everybody up and made people realize. Does anybody remember where the riot started at? You guys remember that? Does anybody remember what the really cause was? I heard on the radio, I think it was WWOMW 104.3. The lady said it got started when a young boy threw a rock at the police. Now, did anybody hear about that? A young boy, a black boy, threw a rock at the police. Anybody hear about that? But then you're talking about here we are trying to make it better and everything, but we still got problems in it. I mean, look at it. How are we going to go forward when we're really taking 2 steps backwards? How are we going to make something able for the better for the next generation to come behind us when we still be looking at ourselves going, huh? And then you're talking about robotics. Guess what? We're the original robots. A machine only do what you tell it to think it do. But then again, you got these things out here, what do you call them, drones, right? They can go up there in the air, stay way off, fire a missile. Like you're sitting there, you way off somewhere, that fire that missile, you're dead. See? What's next? I mean, are we going to let, I'm not trying to be funny when I say this, are we going to let the Terminator come to reality? Are we going to let Blade Runner become reality? Think about it.
Thank you. Now running over here.
You're absolutely right about organizing. I think I would like to correct what my colleague Nelly's gone and can't defend himself. In terms of Ford being, oh, there he is. Here I'm attacking you, or your story. I'm not attacking you. Anyway, the Ford Motor Company in the 1930s and 1920s I believe they raised their wages because of union organizing, worker militancy, and that sort of thing, and that came later, a little propaganda. Ford also was very important in starting the Nazi Party in Germany. He was the biggest giver to Hitler in the early days. He's a well-known racist, and if you're looking for an organization, Green Party, Jill Stone's going to be up at Camp Flint to deal with the water crisis, or help, or talk, and they're an organization that you can rally around.
Okay. Hold one second. Okay, I want to check where we are. So we haven't even got. Was anyone who had their hand up who hadn't spoken yet who I haven't gotten to? Okay. So the first session we're dealing with police, right? Policing crisis then, and we can extend that to today. The second dealing with deindustrialization, which is a big word to say many processes, as he was describing with. In terms of the number of people work in the factory, declining numbers of jobs available because of automation, robotics. So we can think of that in the broader transformation of the economy, including transportation, and how the auto industry in particular shaped these various things in this period. The third session, what was the third session? What was the focus? Housing, land use and housing, right? Which was also a major issue in that period that which the rebellion happened, and has continued in different ways to be important structure of economic opportunity and living chances in the city today. Quickly, anyone have any point from the third session that you want to recall, throw out for our shared consideration now? Third, number 3, on housing and land use.
One of the things about housing, or one of the things I think we left out, was the rise of places like Northland, the malls. In conjunction with President Eisenhower in the 50s is the one that's responsible, I don't know whether you know it or not, he's responsible for your interstate highways. He had to fight the Republican Party to get those funds for the interstate highways throughout the United States of America. As it would have it, Detroit was so important. Northland was the first mall to be built in the United States. And that also upset, and that's 1955. That don't have anything to do with the riots. That started upsetting the housing thing and had people moving out to the suburbs because they started building things out to the suburbs because of the malls, and the malls spread all throughout the country. So that was part of the housing problem. And as those people started moving, the black people that used to stay in Black Bottom on the east side and other parts of the city started moving in those areas. That's partly how Detroit got depopulated. The other issue about how Detroit got depopulated that nobody still wants to talk about, because you got to get back to the robotics and the computer age. You can't duck that. Is that Chrysler Corporation at one time employed the majority of the people in the city of Detroit. Chrysler had over 20 plants, believe it or not, small plants, big plants in the metropolitan Detroit area. And employed all these people. That's not including General Motors and Ford Motor Company. And so once they started with quote-unquote downsizing, along with all the other industries in the United States of America, quote-unquote downsizing, then it started to depopulate people, because now people are not leaving high school to go to the factories anymore because those jobs are not there. So I just wanted to bring that in about the housing.
Thank you. Did you talk about land contracts during the housing conversation? I'm just asking a question. Did you remember talking about land contracts a little bit as one mechanism of restricting housing opportunities and exploiting people? You talked about, Hope For, and more contemporary housing policies. Do you remember that? Did you talk about those? No? A little bit. So, let me say it this way. The issue of housing, the availability of housing, residential segregation, restriction of housing, exploitative housing policies and practices were a part of Detroit in mid-20th century. The part of what led to the rebellion. In different ways, they've continued to be part of the city's development, uneven development since then, and again, in different ways, but still issues of housing and land use are part of what people are struggling over today in terms of the future of the city. So we can think about the Detroit Land Bank. You can think about what some people identify as a land grab by speculators and others, tax foreclosures, this range of things that are part of contemporary Detroit. I'm not saying that's the same thing as what happened in '67 or beyond, but I'm saying that it's perhaps useful to think about what is the relationship between those practices, those policies, those exploitative experiences, and things that are taking place now, all towards thinking about what would we envision to be the could be, should be in place now, what could be the path for the next 50 years. Well, that, I can pass you the mic.
Over here. David.
One of the things we talked about that is important, I think, is the role of the federal government in creating segregation not only in Detroit but throughout the country through redlining. The banks would not give loans to people who wanted to buy homes in predominantly black areas. And if your area had too many blacks, you couldn't get a loan from the bank. And that created the kind of housing inequality based on race that affected not only Detroit, but the rest of the country as well. So the role of the federal government is important to recognize also, which was mentioned in these previous sessions, particularly the last session.
Yes. Do they know what he's talking about when he says red light? Yes, you know? Who does not know what redlining is but would like to know because you're here to know, to learn, and to grow?
So I think it was the guy from Loveland talked about it, about how there were like districts, official, unofficial districts, kind of at every level of government that the Federal Housing Association, I think it was, deemed areas that were too risky to lend in. And then, so no one could get a mortgage in that area. And then it kind of flipped, I think in the 70s it was, where there was a, not Federal Housing Association, but the Federal Housing Act of 70s something that made it so that like these white profiteers could basically come in and start lending to all these people. And then they knew that the default rate was going to be high, and the federal government had already backed the mortgages. So that when they went into default, all these people got paid, and then you had an epidemic of homelessness, basically.
Yeah. Go ahead, right here.
And what I thought was most powerful about, the last session was how they, all three folks talked about how the kind of racist logic that was that led to foreclosures in the 70s, redlining before that, tax foreclosure at present, is routed both through policy and through actions between individual folks. So it's not just about you've got a racist realtor and racist neighbors, it's also about the policy that allows you to get a particular kind of loan or not. And it's not just about that you have certain people who live places, it's about a tax foreclosure process that could be more humane, but isn't because Wayne County needs the money to balance the budget. So thinking on both of these kinds of registers and others, that like this racist logic is part of all of them and not just in one place or the other.
I thought one of you guys said, yeah.
I guess kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit, also sort of thinking of how housing is really, when people think about racism historically in America, especially the way it's taught in more primary education, I guess, or when you're younger at least, I think a lot of people think of examples in the South. But the major idea of how racist practices happened in the North was through housing. Things like segregation, things like redlining really were the tools that people in the North used to really push back this social group. And I think that's something that like really needs to be thought about and taught to people at a younger age more, because I don't know, I just think that like we need to divide out this way that we think about racism in our history and like where it happened and how it happened, and make it so that you're not just thinking about segregation that happened in the South, but the ways that it happened in urban areas like Detroit as well.
And now the irony of it is, like, you had all like white flight happening in the 60s and 70s, and now you have the white people and the money coming back in and like staking their claim in the cities, and you see that through Detroit Future City and their plan and their project, even though they had a comprehensive, long community engagement, period of a few years, like, if you look at their plan, it plays into the hands of the big businesses and the corporations who want their stakes back in the city, and the white folks who want to gentrify, especially along the big axes of the city. And that plays into what we talked about, like displacement and gentrification and all of that. And so in any case, like, if Detroit is important or not important for white people and for the money, in any case, the black population is sort of like the thing that has to be moved around to be dealt with or to be forgotten, I think. And that's like where tax foreclosures come in too, because they can like easily move someone by saying you can't live here anymore.
Yeah, and connecting that idea of gentrification to tax foreclosure too, because you can see tax, like we saw the map, anyone who was here, that the guy from Loveland put up, like, tax foreclosure is happening all throughout the city, but the way that it happens is really gonna differ based off of what zip code you're talking about. If you're somebody who lives next to a gentrifying area and you are in tax foreclosure and you want to try and save your home, try and buy it in the tax auction, it's going to be a lot harder for you than somebody who's living in a place that isn't gentrifying. So even thinking about how it's shaping that struggle you see happening all throughout the city.
And I think those last two comments bring us to think particularly about today, what's happening today, and what mechanisms are creating the things we see now, and what things should be in place to resist those, respond to those, and create something new and better. No, I'm here for you, but you're busy. So here you got it. Okay. Quickly. Hey, we all came here together, so I just know it. I'm ready. I'd like what you said, man. Listen, they say it's 350 million people, I guess, or something like that in the country. That's 200 million white people. Now, however many Mexicans it is, a lot of them think they white. I don't care how many black people it is, there's some black people think they white. The culture is an Anglo-American culture. Everybody else done, sifted into it. But this is a white country. Now, people get confused because this is not 1950 no more. Now, the people with money have proved they don't care what nationality you are or what country you from. If you can contribute to that capitalist economic formation, they want you, from Einstein, German, anybody else. They don't care. German, African, Ethiopian, they don't care. They will let you in if you're going to be some kind of capitalist form. But now I said all that to say we got to get rid of this idea. We know the dominant thing, you look at NATO, white.
You look at the Congress of this country, white. I mean, it's white. I mean, good Lord, what do you need? But it's multinational. Still, we got still carrying this idea around, if you're being discriminated by money, it's white people. Like it ain't no multi-millionaire blacks, Chinese, Japanese. I mean, it's a new day. This is multinational. We got to get up off of this old kick. Like I said, we got to think more multiplicitous than this black or white thing. If I didn't live here and I looked at America's news, I would think the country was all black and all white. It was just them two, without all these other nationalities. You know what I mean? But we got to get up off of that. But on the redlining, look, when I was a kid on the east side of Detroit, black people owned stores. If they didn't own the store, the franchise was big then, but that wasn't the name of it. AMPs, all of that, black people in. They put on the front page of the paper. The front page, after they took everybody's stuff, they said, oh, by the way, we redlined them out. That's why I like what you said about redlining. They put it on the front page of the paper. We wouldn't give them loans, and they wouldn't say we, they would say them. Oh, they wouldn't give them loans. They sold them bad meat and blah, blah, blah. When they bulldozed Paradise Valley, Black Bottom, and stuff like that, these are conscious decisions. You know what I mean? They put on the front page of the paper 30 years ago. Oh, this is criminal what they're doing to the black people in the city. Like the city was all black or something, about car insurance. They put it on, and then, like I say, lately, I think about a year or two ago, they put it on the front page of the paper again. Oh, it's criminal what they're doing to those people in the city with these insurance rates. These are conscious decisions, conscious, calculated to keep a profit. But it's not just a white profit, it's multinational. It's black businessmen making money off of this stuff too. And then we got to get up off of this, because it's only a multinational organization that's going to whip them. That's the only thing that's going to whip them. Hey, Nick, how you doing, man? You know what I'm saying? So, anyway, I want to speak definitely that car insurance thing, but when the guy was saying the thing about Chrysler, General Motors, and Ford, about how they advanced the society and blah, blah, blah. Any progress is going to advance society. But I'm just saying, we got to look at the thing as multiplicitous. It's not one thing going on. There's a lot of things going on at the same time. You know what I mean? They make it look like it's just a certain group of people that's in advanced society. It's kids. When I was a little boy, I'm gonna give it up. When I was a little boy, I didn't think black people had done nothing. All this stuff that all y'all know now about the history of black people, we didn't know that. I thought we was lucky to have white people. My nose is long. I thought this was white nose. My grandmother had to tell me that's Blackfoot Indian. I'm just saying, we thought everything was white, white, white. I got grandkids. They think. They done went all the way back. You know what I mean? And think that it's the white folks. That's the greatest thing on earth. I'm just saying, they want us to blame you. It ain't you. You ain't got control of that. You know what I mean? It's them. But I'm just saying, these are conscious decisions. And anybody that was here last week, that was a great presentation they gave about the mortgages and the segregated housing. Like, you can't talk about the transportation thing and not talk about segregated housing. It's impossible. Segregated schools. That's a plan. That's a plan. They plan around that. You know what I mean? So, anyway, love y'all.
Okay, I want to honor the promise made at the beginning, which is to address the stated topic for today, which is Detroit, remodeled city. And then post-industrial rebirth or powder keg, question mark. So the idea is this. So we have an answer. We're coming to that in a second. But the idea is this, that Detroit today is different than it was 50 years from 67. There are some continuity, some similarities, but it is different. It's being remodeled. And so the title poses two possibilities. Is it being remodeled as experiencing a rebirth, a post-industrial rebirth? In other words, after its heyday of being an industrial powerhouse of the auto industry and so forth. recognizing that no longer being the basis of the city's economy and so forth, is it experiencing a rebirth, something beyond that? Or is it a powder keg? For some similar or maybe new reasons, is it ready to explode again? Now, you might not accept that framing. You might say it's neither, or it's some of both, or you might have a third or fourth proposition or way to understand it. But we want to have a conversation about that from what you know from outside of this series, as well as what you've learned from the series, the three previous sessions, as well as today. What say you about Detroit as a remodeled city? And the mic, it has energy and power, and it is driving me. I can't even really control where I go. And it's really drawn like a moth to a flame to people who haven't spoken yet. See, I'm walking in zigzag and I'm not even in control because it's looking for people who haven't spoken yet. No, haven't spoken yet? He has he answered the question, but we're going to discount that. And then I said hand here. I know we had a couple hands here.
Thank you. I would like to, so many things I'd like to say, but I will say that Stephen brought up some catchphrases: rebirth, coming back, remodeling. And I come from the suburbs where the conversation doesn't happen at all. And it's easy not to talk about it when you can afford to be ignorant. And I'm going to generalize. I know it's dangerous, but it's not a black or white thing. It's a suburban, urban thing. And I talk to people all the time about it. I'm usually the dissenting opinion about Detroit. People have this idea that suddenly Detroit is safe again and okay to walk around. What they don't understand is that this is a city where we're sitting right now. This is a city within a city. And the comeback, the rebirth is happening here. But to answer your question, it's 142 square miles, the city. And we are active in about a 7 square mile area. So that's about 5% of a city that's about a third vacant. And so I try to have this conversation with people in my family, with my friends. And it's tough because they have this conception, they grew up with an idea of Detroit much like I did. You can't help your childhood. But I've seen racism, I've heard it all the time, and it's just there enough to make people feel uncomfortable. And I call it out all the time. And it's when I wish that more people understood the history of the city before they move here, because I was taught that wherever you go, you have to respect the people that are there. You have to learn their language and their culture and their history. And Detroit is one of, if not the most fraught area to move into. And what's more interesting is that all of this is happening right now in the area that we're sitting in the 50th anniversary of something that is completely racial. And now this concentrated area is becoming a polarization of that. And I agree. I really appreciate what you said about generalizing. I really appreciate that. But the fact remains that I feel like a fish in a sea of sharks in the suburbs, because as you get farther away, you get farther away. And my parents, my dad grew up here, his friends grew up here, and I always listen before I speak. I always try to absorb what's being said to me so that I can tailor my tone and whatnot. But it's hard to shape someone's opinion who grew up here and whose perception of the rebellion is not the rebellion, but riots. And this is why I come here tonight. I come here to learn and hear about what other people have to say. This is the purpose of it, is to find other perspectives. So I think that's about it.
Thank you. So, the shop steward, he had asked to speak earlier, and he hadn't spoken yet. Coming in, didn't come into you, and you had your hand up, so I did see that. And then if the other hands I didn't see, please let me know.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question. And then, how many different races are in this room? How many different races are in this room? How many different races? Yeah. How many different races of people are in this room? Oh, how about none or one? I think that you have to understand that the people in power got in power because they got a hell of a lot of money, right? They own what we work at, and they keep what we build, whether it's hamburgers or cars or bathtubs or anything else. It belongs to them after we build it. And they let us have some back through the wage system. So one of the great ideologies of those owners, right, is racism. It's convincing you that you're better than somebody else, right? You accept it. It's funny. I gotta agree with you. I grew up in Detroit, but I moved to the suburbs 1990 or so, 91. Okay. I moved to the suburbs in 91, but it wasn't, it's funny. It obviously there's a struggle to control the suburbs by the people that own the means of production, right? Chrysler. Just like there's a struggle for them to control the city. And one of the weapons they have is segregation. Because I grew up in a segregated society, and all of us did. Most of us did. So I want to, somebody bought a house down the street from me about 2 weeks ago, moved in, and the lady next door to me, that I've been living next to since 92, she walks her dog every morning when weather permitting, right? And I really like her dog, and I like them. We're not buddies or anything like that, but they're neighbors. When his family moved in 2 weeks ago, she stopped walking her dog, like past that house. So, if anyone doubts that ideology is not deep, the police work for the city government, just like they work for the city government out in the suburbs. The city government fosters segregation. fostered segregation. We grew up in it. We don't know anything else. So I just would like people to read a book by Dorothy Roberts. And I know if you want to write it down, I'll see how many people are going to go get the book and read it. It's called Fatal Invention. Right? We're the victims. Everyone in this society that is at the bottom, that works for a living, are the victims of that fatal invention. And I hope you take the time to find the book. If you can't afford it, it's in the library. Yeah, Fatal Invention by Dorothy Roberts. Thank you.
Is this all right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I believe that Detroit needs a revolution. I've had people, one person from the West Coast said now that Detroit's made a comeback. I said it's not a comeback, it's just been done to. It's never been gone. We know there are a lot of values in the city of Detroit, a lot of things totally overlooked. The revolution, however, needs to be led by women, just like the ones in Ireland. Finally, the Catholic women and the Protestant women got together and stopped that decades and centuries of fighting. I watched with a friend, Sidney Poitier's, one of his first movies, if not the first one. And it was about some racial tension situation. It was one incident that started this. And you'll see a scene where there's all these white men in some warehouse getting all their guns and weapons together. And all some black men oversaw that, snuck it in, saw what was going on. They went over to their gathering place and they're getting all their weapons and such. So I saw this film, and then I went to the Wright Museum when they were having a historian talk about the 6 rebellions starting in the late 1800s. And every one of them had some single incident, and sometimes they know what the incident was, and sometimes they don't know who started it, black or white. But somebody started it, and then next thing you know, everybody's got weapons. Testosterone poisoning is what Ms. Magazine called it. So yes, Detroit needs a revolution, and we will let you guys join us women as we lead you to it.
Thank you.
And strong black women are one of my favorite people.
Anyone else want to speak to? I do. Can I say something?
Yes,
Sorry.
you may.
I have a microphone, so it's easy to do.
How'd you get the mic to work?
I mean, I realize we're nearing the end, but there's something, as somebody, I consider myself in the sandwich generation in this room because I'm in midlife, right? And it's very painful, but in any case, late 40s, so in any case, okay, I'm sure it'll get more painful, I have no doubt. But this is really sort of a comment/question, maybe just more a general reflection. We know that we're kind of nearing the end tonight, so I'm not trying to open up a can of worms, but I just kind of wanted to underline something that I think is really, I know for me personally has been a challenge at some level as sort of being in and out of movement work for 20, 25 years in between kids and various things. We've heard a few times tonight, and also I think in some previous sessions and in previous series, about this idea that we need to build organization. It's come up several times tonight, and I completely agree with what I think I'm hearing being proposed. But I also want to, and I'm pretty sure just about everybody who said that, certainly over here in this part of the room, has been a part of building organizations probably their entire lives. Different kinds of organizations, political organizations, organizations that are connected to the workplace, organizations that are connected to community struggles, et cetera, et cetera. I actually think it's a really, as much as I agree with the prescription that's being proposed and the challenge, I think it's actually, I think, and probably folks who have suggested it, it's an extremely complicated question to sort of get your head around right now. The idea is simple. But like which organizations? I mean, certainly the Green Party's been mentioned. I was a part of the Green Party many years ago. I've been part of a socialist organization many years ago. There's not a lot of great choices. I mean, it's not to say that there aren't organizations out there doing important work, but I mean, when we're talking about building a mass movement organization, which is what I think I'm hearing, I just want to underline, I think it's a really complicated question for anybody to sort of sort through right now in this particular period. Now, I'm not saying there aren't organizations out there doing incredible work. I'm just saying that idea and that challenge, while a really important one, I think it's a very different kind of question today than it was in the 60s or even the 70s and 80s, and that a lot of the organizations that folks are coming out of are very connected to the workplace. Not all of them, but many of them, connected to unions. I'm a big union supporter, but we all know that the economic situation and unions and labor are substantially weaker. I still think very relevant. I think the workplace is still very relevant. But as we've been hearing many times, the workplace is becoming less relevant through automation. There's fewer and fewer people. So I mean, these tensions are very real. Yet we all need to get a job, probably at some point, right, to make some money. And so the workplace will always be relevant. Whether unions are strong or not strong. But I guess I'm just sort of reflecting, not just on tonight, but in general, this idea that we need to build organizations. I agree completely. I think it's extremely challenging, fraught one, even within Detroit. There's lots of there's always so many damn small organizations. Where's that really huge, big organization? I mean, and that's one very sort of overly simplistic way to think about it. But at some level, we have too many damn small organizations, right? I mean, at some level, that's part of the problem. And so, which hat do you wear? I was talking to Margaret. Sherry. Sorry, got your name wrong, Sherry. How about, which hat do you have on? I mean, so many of us are involved in so many different organizations too. So which hat are you wearing in a particular night? You can't wear 12 different hats, so which organization are you promoting? So I'm kind of beating a dead horse now, but I just kind of want to throw that out there. Probably is a can of worms right at the end, but I think it's a really important one. I think young people feel it. I feel it as a middle-aged person. Other people who've been through that organization out there, and we can list them, but man, this is tough work to do, and we need to build them, but which ones? And how do we do it together? And how do we build all of them? And when and where? So, I mean, these are all just really big questions.
Perhaps we can deal with that can of worms open up at the end of the session by inviting people to informally talk with each other and learn about things people are involved in. Informally after we formally close, to respect people's time. Let's go with two more. So I promise to come back to Baxter. I see a new hand here. And I also want to ask Pleasock to tell us something as we close.
Thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make any of the other meetings, and I actually live in Ypsilanti now, although I lived in Detroit City for 20 years. So what I'd like to encourage is a little bit of a riff on his last comment about organizations. They are important, no matter what they are and how they come together. And I'm not sure that we need one all-purpose organization, but rather a coalition movement so that the various groups are talking with each other. I'd like to put in a plug for the Repairers of the Breach, which is led by Reverend William Barber out of North Carolina. He is a rekindling of New Poor People's Campaign. Reverend Barber was the leader, still is the leader in many ways, of the effort in North Carolina that has led to tremendously successful coalition building throughout the state and has pushed back against some terrible reactionary forces and has regained a lot of ground so far. There's more to do, but it's a very powerful message, and he's a great orator, a fabulous organizer, and the coalition principles at work are described in a recent book of his, The Third Reconstruction, which is a signal, testimonial about what he's done so far, and also a guidebook to putting similar kinds of coalition work into practice now.
Thank you. So now as we walk over here for our last comment and then a bit of an announcement. Let me just pick up on those two to say that one way to think about this is that there are many people, organizations, a lot of energies of people trying to combat a lot of things we've talked about that we know that are wrong and creating inequalities and oppression in the city, as well as many people, organizations, energies which are trying to envision and create something new. Okay, so Baxter, Marion, and if we stop, will just tell us about Riverwatch.
Go ahead, Mary,
Okay, I guess as a younger person, I feel like it's often, I feel like the movements that are being created by younger people are often being overlooked, and the innovative organization, decentralized organization that young people have created in the form of like the Black Lives Matter movement, for example, where you can't point to a single leader and it's like that for a reason. I think that like these organizations do exist. I think that there's also a lot of issues that we need to figure out is in terms of like organizing on the left. Everybody knows that like people are doing the same things and we're not working together, and like everybody knows there's a lot of that going on, but like this idea that there isn't organizing or like that we need to start creating this, it's like it's already there and it's largely being led by like Black Lives Matter, for example, started by queer Black women. Like this is like, I think they get invisibilized because of the way that society works and because of the way oppression works. Like the leadership of the way these organizations work are largely anarchist or just, or like I said, decentralized, and because that's not how people think organizations should work, they don't respect the work that they do, or they don't respect the fact that like that is a leadership structure, that is a way of organizing. And so I guess, yeah, I just have this like, I always have this gut reaction when people are like, organize, 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 as if like we're not doing that already, or as if it's also not hard enough already with like, you know, trying to pay off student loans and work a job and like have a life. And then like, I know that this is the fight everybody has had all along, but like, you know, it's not a cakewalk for anyone right now. Yeah, so I guess that's all I wanted to add.
And we should say this very space in which we're in right now is now and has been for decades a space which is various organizations and activist energies. Okay, final comment and then announcement.
Keep in mind that an organization is nothing more than a group of individuals. Revolution needs to take place within yourself and within your heart first. How you grow yourself determines what type of contribution you can even make to an organization. What are you bringing to that? You know, we talk about all these systems and stuff, the government and this system. The bottom line is people make the decisions. People just like you and me, people that are gonna live and die. They make these decisions. It's not some mythical government creature that's making these decisions. It's people, just like you and me. And the leaders that we're talking about, you are the leader. I'm listening to you, young man, talk about, and I feel for you. I know what that's like to be in a situation where you're trying to break through to someone who has a hardened attitude about whatever. Don't waste your time. I'll tell you that right now. You beating your head up against a wall. The best example that you can be to somebody that you would like to see change is to be that example. You're not going to find the answers that you're looking for in these textbooks. And I'm sorry for those of you in the academic world, if that means that you don't sell as many books, so be it. The problem in today's society is they don't want you to think outside the box. You need to write the book, the new book. I want you to think about something for a minute when we talk about gentrification and how people must feel in the city of Detroit, right here in Midtown and different places where, for the most part, they've been living here for years and years and years, surviving, paying higher taxes than they should have been, higher water bills and utility bills than they should have been, because the burden was left on them. To such an extent, now their resources are totally depleted. They're living in housing stock that, for the most part, all of the equity is gone. And they don't have the money to rebuild, to put the new roof on that needs to be put on, to put the new furnace in that needs to be put in. I want you to think about what it must have felt like for the Native Americans who were in this part of the world when the settlers came. And the settlers made the decision, we're going to save you from yourself because you're a savage. We're going to introduce you to civilization. Because your culture is trash. You need Christianity. You need all of these different things that you don't have. Because obviously your natural medicine doesn't work. So we're going to give you blankets full of smallpox. Just making a little side. I'm sorry. But it is true. We're going to give you pills, bring it up to this time right now, that have 50 side effects that are worse off than what you're taking the pill for. But that's better than the natural medicine that you had. This is the world that you're living in today. And it's because of money and greed is at the top of every decision that's being made. That's not the world that I want to live in. That's not the world that I want you to live in. That's not the world that I want your children to live in. I want to see a world where at the top is based on love and concern for each other, the planet, and the things that really matter. Because guess what? I remember, talk about housing. Today, my house is worth $30,000. On Wall Street or wherever, the folks that control money, and they say, well, we need more money. Okay, print more money, put money in the system. Oh, we got too much money in the system, pull it out. They manipulate that same house worth $30,000 today could be worth $5,000 tomorrow. Not because the bricks on that house are any different or the roof on that house is any different. Only because they say so. Now what's wrong with that picture? Think about it. Manipulation, revolution has to take charge. That's you. Has to take charge and reel this craziness in and stop it. It's up to you. It really is. It's up to you. Don't be intimidated because you don't have enough money. Because guess what? Guess what? Your role in this whole thing is to produce and consume. If you don't want to play the game anymore, it's just like Monopoly. You don't have to produce anymore. You don't have to consume anymore. And guess what's going to happen? Folks going to start listening to you. They're going to start paying attention. Because if you don't buy gasoline and oil to put in a car or whatever, guess what's going to happen to the oil companies? They're going to start listening to you. They're going to say, what's wrong? Joe and Mary consumer, why aren't y'all buying gas anymore? If you don't buy diamonds anymore that are produced over in Africa with, do your research. Conditions, children's labor and stuff, people dying in the mines and stuff. Just do your own investigation and research about what's going on. And then you can think about what type of world you would like to see. Just think about that. Thank you.
Go ahead, clap, 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 clap. So that will formally close the evening, but informally, please still talk, eat some of the rest of the food. I'm going to ask Restock to tell you about a publication there, which actually is a space where people are imagining and trying to create the world they want to see.
So this magazine, we have copies over there on the table, and it's locally produced. It's a brand new magazine. This is just a second issue, and it's totally grassroots. It's produced by a collective, and we welcome contributors. It's all stories on the ground, stories about what's happening now, stories about what's happening in the neighborhoods, not on a corporate level. It's not about the comeback. It's not about rebuilding Detroit from a corporate level. It's about what's happening right in our neighborhoods, right under our noses, and things that we are creating together as communities, as collectives, to make the world a better place, to create the world that we want to live in. So anyway, grab a copy. There's also a new edition coming out in a few days. That's 50th anniversary commemoration of the rebellion. And also you can, if you want to write, if you want to contribute your stories, please, the information's in here to who to submit to.
And they can get copies of that new edition at the Source Bookstore as well as other places around, right?
And I just had
Take us away, Greg.
Just two things I wanted to say after thanking you for being here tonight and for all the wisdom that's been shared. One, once I'm done talking, please help fold the chairs again like we've done. Don't do it yet. Secondly, and more importantly, we end every speaker series by going to Bert's. We go to Bert's in the Marketplace Jazz Club, and so we welcome anybody to come with us. If you haven't been to Bert's on a Thursday night, then you've missed out on a slice of heaven as far as I'm concerned. It's an open mic. Anybody can sing, anybody can play. It's amazing. Lastly, we're going to be doing a series again in the fall and a series next winter. The topics are still being developed, but stay tuned for more. If you didn't put your email address on the sheet by Marianne out here, do it before you leave. Thank you so much. Grab some food and please fold the chairs up. Have a great night. It's so damn hot. Yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah, appreciate it. Well, if you didn't put